Okay, so one thing that you may do as a designer often is be asked to retouch photographs. This is one of the most powerful things that Photoshop can do, and it is one of the most basic things that you as a graphic designer might need to know how to do. It's good for everything from just changing the contrast or the white balance on an image, as we'll see here in a minute, on a photograph that maybe you've taken, all the way to going and retouching old photographs. And in fact, you can even make a living as a graphic designer often just retouching old photographs like this. So for this project, I have downloaded the two files here. It's in downloads on the side here. LOC Wright, Wolf Creek Flood. This is a picture that the Wright brothers, the same ones who made the airplane, took. And then LOC Shepherd. The LOC, this is the Library of Congress. These are images from the Library of Congress. And they are images that have been preserved as part of the United States National Archive of Photographs. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go to Open here. Because I downloaded these, they're going to be in Downloads. And I'm going to go ahead and open up LOC Wright Wolf Creek Flood. I'm going to click Open. We'll see that it opens up this document here. And wow, that is an enormous brush. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to click on the Move tool. It's going to get me into just not having a brush so I can have a little arrow here. And the first thing I'm going to want to do, I want to zoom in to be able to see this. And I'm going to go Command 0, and this is going to zoom this up to my screen. Now I have this thing timeline. This is from a different project. I am going to actually get rid of this. If your screen looks slightly different than this, you can always go up here. And we have Essentials, 3D, Motion. These are the various default workspaces. I'm going to go ahead and click Reset Essentials so that my screen looks likely like what yours will. Command 0 on the keyboard again. Zooms the picture in. And we can see right off that this picture has some problems. The first one is that it is sitting on this background, and really the first thing I want to do, I want to straighten up this image, and I want to make sure that I get this ragged edge off. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, the Crop tool. Crop tool, letter C, is going to allow me, and you can see it'll give us little hints as to what each of these does. I'm going to click the Crop tool, and I'm going to clear this up here. This, if it has a ratio, we'll see it said 1:1 square. This will mean that if I tried to change anything, it will always stay in that same ratio. I'm going to clear this. We want to make sure we don't have numbers up here. And I'm going to grab these little white handles. Move them, they'll snap when I get close to the edge here, to the edge of my screen. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure this image is actually straight on the page, and I don't think it really is. Up here at the top, we have the straighten, the little level here. If I click on this, see that it gives me this little bubble level with a plus sign. I'm going to click at the top right corner, click and hold, and I drag down to go across this line, and it looks like it's pretty straight, maybe minus 0.1 degrees of change. Now, if we had an image that was, say, really, really askew, I'm just going to do this. It will rotate that so that that's the straight line. And I'm going to go up to Edit and Undo. And for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taking this white space out of the edge. I'm going to do that by grabbing these handles. I'm going to move this past there. I'm going to move this kind of past there. Move this down past the top of what was probably the film. And I'm going to move this up to the bottom there. Now, once I have the amount of the image that I want to have, I'm going to go ahead and press Return, and this will commit the change. And we can see now that we have a little bit better. It is full bleed. It goes out to the image goes all the way to the edge of the frame. Now, The next thing that I want to do, you can see we have some spots where it looks like maybe the photograph decayed a little bit, maybe it burnt up here. There's some watermarks, there's a darker spot. First thing that I'm going to want to do is go ahead and start removing those. Now, in the old days, one of the first things that Photoshop did that really set itself apart was it allowed people to come in, designers to come in and copy and paste things almost like a paintbrush using this thing called the clone stamp tool. It's this one here, it's the letter S. If I click on this, it gives me the little brush circle. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to show you that if you just try to use it, say I wanted to say, oh, I'm going to erase this big dot up here at the top. If I click, I'll get this error. It says, could not use the clone stamp because the area to clone has not been defined. Option click to define a source point. So the source point is going to be, I'm going to click OK to get rid of that. The source point is going to be the place where I want to copy from. To get that, I'm going to press Option, and we'll see these little crosshairs show up. This lets me go in here and define the source point. So I'm going to press and hold Option, still holding Option, and I'm going to do a single click with the mouse. And now I'm going to release Option. Now, this is the neat part. Notice that little dot, that area starts to kind of move in. And we can see that it superimposes over this, even without clicking, just moving the mouse around. Now if I click and drag, we'll see that little plus sign follows my mouse. And whoops, looks like here's the downside. We were able to get rid of this, but I'll just do that again. The problem is the clone stamp tool doesn't really discriminate between what it should be cloning, which in this case, what I want it to clone is the sky, and things like, smudges, maybe the house that's down here, the trees, so that I could get some pretty weird images pretty fast. Now, Adobe thought about that, and they've actually added in a lot neater programs that we can use in here. The next one I want to show you is going to be the Spot Healing Brush tool. Now, the Spot Healing Brush tool, this takes the idea of the clone stamp tool, and it just makes it just that much neater and that much cleaner using artificial intelligence to kind of assume what maybe you want it to clone based on what the rest of the area around it looks like. So to start off, I'm going to make this just a little bit larger. I'm going to make this, say, 60 pixels. And this is always up here, this toolbar, and I can click and drag, and we'll see that it starts to paint this gray onto the screen. Now when I release, it automatically takes the area around it, and we can see there's still some little, it's not perfect, but I can erase something like this almost perfectly. I can go down here even. Go up here, I could get some of these watermarks, these little water spots out of the top of the photograph. Whoops, and see, this is the problem, is if it sees something down here that maybe it thinks you want to have up here. But the nice thing is all I have to do is just go back over it and it's gone. Now this last one, we're going to go ahead and use a different one. This is called the patch tool. So one thing you need to know is if there's a little arrow, these little tiny arrows next to each of these things in your toolbar, and I think every one of them except the zooming tool here, the plus and minus. If you hit Alt, you get minus. Command 0 will let me get back to 100% there. Every single one of these has a little arrow next to it. So if I click and hold on the Spot Healing Brush tool, you'll notice that I get this thing called the Content Aware Move, the Patch tool, the Healing Brush. The Healing Brush and the Spot Healing Brush, the only difference is that the Healing Brush, I'll show you this, requires you to Option click, just like a define point, and it works kind of the same as the clone stamp. It's sort of the middle of the way between the two. The Patch tool, on the other hand, is going to let us take, let's see, if I click, hold, and drag down, get the Patch tool. And if I click and draw, I can draw a circle around the piece. Now, once I've selected this, this has what's called the marching ants. This is the technical term for these, around the selection. If I now click and drag, we'll see that I can choose, and now here's the downside, of course, again, I can choose anything. So I could choose the piece of sky that I think this looks the most like. Maybe that's this one right here, and I let go. And just like magic, it goes in there. It also blends the edges, which is another nice thing. Go up to select. I'm going to go deselect to get rid of those marching ants. And that's all gone. One other thing we might want to do is we have this sky up here. There are things like the dodge and the dodge tool. Under this, we have the burn tool, the dodge tool. Dodge tool is going to make things lighter. And this is like old-time photography. Dodging would lighten an image, and burning would allow you to put more light on it and darken an image. I'm going to change this to be really big. And I'm going to very quickly just kind of click and drag, click, click, click. You'll see that as I click, I can very slightly lighten the area. Now, there are some pitfalls to this. Is sometimes if I work too fast, I get a little too overzealous. I'm going to turn hardness is the amount that it does this per click. If I have this at hardness like that, 4, 5, I could end up with something like this where I've accidentally burnt out this image. Now, I can go to Edit, Undo Dodge Tool. I can also use Command Z to undo it. I can also go up here to the History, this little tab here, and I can just go back, and I can click back through, and I can say, where did I go wrong? And I went wrong, I would say right about there. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it at that, close this little toolbox, and just like that, we have, maybe I'll go back up here. Whoops. Undo, undo, undo. Change the hardness back to 0 here. And I am going to maybe click around and lighten that sky just a little bit more. Now, one of the things that might happen is, let's say, for instance, down here, I'm going to zoom in on the house. And we can see that we have some stuff. Whoops, that's way too far in. Command minus sign. That'll zoom me out a little bit. I have some stuff above this here that maybe I don't want to risk hitting this roof while I'm doing. Up here, this is the marquee tool, the rectangular marquee tool. What the rectangular marquee tool does, if I click on this, click and drag, is this will create a little box, little path of marching ants here. Now, the neat thing that the marquee tool does is it selects the workspace that I'm about to work in. And it won't let me do anything to any of the surrounding area. This means if I wanted to use the spot healing brush tool again, so I'm going to click on the patch tool and hold, go to spot healing brush. Even if I am swinging around out here, the only place that it affects is inside, and you see that gray only shows up in there. It only affects the inside of this, and that's pretty cool. It looks like it just added a little bit to that roof. For today, I'm just going to leave that and call it artistic. And then if I go up here, I can select, deselect, and like that, we now have this magical, and whoops, add a little bit of tree there. I'll undo and show you. So click that, kind of clean up the tree, clean up some of these dots. And just like that, we now have the clean roof. Now, the marquee tool lets you do things like a single row of pixels, a single column of pixels, an elliptical marquee, which looks like this. If you're in the marquee tool and you click and you have the wrong thing, just click away, it disappears. The other one is maybe we don't necessarily want just a rectangle or we don't want a circle. We also have this thing called the lasso tool. The lasso tool comes in 3 different types. The lasso tool classic, the polygonal lasso tool, which we're going to use a little bit today, and the magnetic lasso tool. So the regular lasso tool, much like that patch tool, we can draw around things. And the only difference is that instead of the patch tool, where it then let us change things inside this, The regular lasso tool just lets us draw around something and then do our whatever with any of the other tools. So I'm going to click away to deselect. I'm going to click and hold. I'm going to show you the polygon lasso tool here. With this one, what we do is I'm going to click right here on this this top corner of the roof, and you see it starts this little line. Now, if I wanted to, for instance, select just this roof, I can click at each of the little corners. I'm just going to miss that tree there. Go up the roof line here. Go over the roof line here. And then when I'm here, if I want to make this really quick, instead of just clicking here, I can just double click and it will automatically draw the shortest line between the 2 points right there. And now if I wanted to go in here and use the healing brush, whoops, I just took the whole roof off the place. Well, maybe that's not going to work for us. Maybe something like this, we'd want to use the clone stamp. So I'm going to change again, go to the clone stamp, change the size of it way down, so I'm at least working with something. I'm going to press and hold Option and select some other part of the roof here. Now I could go in here and I can just clean this roof up. Whoops, select again. So because it started to get towards the chimney, I'm going to select a little further away again. We'll see that little plus sign shows up right over here. Go back over there. Just like that, I can kind of, sort of, fake it till I make it. Make that roof happen. And then select, deselect. And like that, it's pretty darn close to what that roof would look like. The last one is the magnetic lasso tool. I'm going to show you this one. It may not work as well with this, but the magnetic lasso tool takes the polygon lasso tool and makes it easy. And we'll see it sits here and it draws these little lines, and every so often, just of its own accord, it will put little dots. If I want to make a dot, I can click, say, okay, this is a point where I'm going to turn. It's going to look, it kind of reaches out, and it's trying to find places where the pixels look different. You'll see that it's not exactly perfect. It'll have little bumps. Something that I could also do, I'm going to go back to the polygon lasso tool here, is if I wanted to remove some of this lassoed space, if I press and hold Option, we'll see that little minus sign shows up next to my tool right here in the middle, of the screen. The little minus sign means I can click, I can draw down, draw up, double click. And what this does, I'm going to make this a little more dramatic. I'm going to just cut off half of this. And we'll see that by defining that space, we can remove part of our marching ants. Now, maybe I would want to do something. This also works with the marquee tool. So I'm click and hold to get the rectangular marquee. Can remove that. Maybe I want to add something to my selection. Press and hold Shift and click and drag out, and this will add to it. The parts don't actually have to be together either. I could add 3, 4, 5, 6 little squares here. And now anything I do would only be able to be done in these squares. Command D will let you deselect things as well. So I'm going to hit Command and the letter D and zoom out of that. The next thing that I want to talk about with this, so I'm going to click Command 0 to get us back out to where we can see the whole image. And maybe you might want to go through here and do something like clean up these edges. Again, the healing brush tool makes this super easy, super fast. The last thing I might want to do with an image like this is I may want to adjust the black and white balance of it. To do this, over here in the properties, there's a panel that says Properties, Adjustments, Libraries. I'm going to click on Adjustments. And in this, we have things like brightness, contrast, levels, curves, exposure, add an adjustment. Let's see, So we had exposure. The next few down here are going to be things for like hue and saturation for color. This is a black and white image. Invert, posterize. I'm going to go ahead and click on curves here. Because this is a black and white image, it's not going to let me have all these adjustment layers, but we're going to see that what this does is this creates, this curves one layer down here in my layers panel. Now up here, this is the levels of the different colors. So there's a lot of a very light gray, all the way to a little bit more black towards the end here. Right to this side, I have these little eyedroppers that say this is set white point, set gray midpoint. Now this is only, again, available with color. And then set black point. What these let me do, if I click on set white point, I'm going to choose what I think is what should be the whitest white in the image here. I'm going to click here, and we'll see that it very much lightens the image. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to set the black point. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to click this one, this eyedropper here. Go over here and find the blackest black. I'm going to say that is right about there, maybe. And if we can click around a little bit if we want. And maybe I accidentally click up here. Whoops. I can just go over here. I can go back to new curves layer. And we're out. Go ahead and reset that white point. Maybe here. And what this will do is this will give us a little bit more contrasty of an image and really clean that image up, really make it look like it was almost like it was made yesterday and not in the 19th century. With this, we now have this layer. Now, the nice thing about these layers is, and we'll see this in subsequent lessons, is that we can hide these layers and we haven't actually modified our original image. So if I wanted to, for instance, go back and see what the original image looked like and then change and see what the curves did, I just poke this little eye here next to layers, and that hides or makes visible my image, my curves layer. The last thing I'm going to want to do with this first image is I'm going to go up to File, and I want to go ahead and save it. So I'm going to Save As. Because this has multiple layers, it's going to only let me really do this as a Photoshop, large document, PDF, or TIFF file. I want to go ahead and select Photoshop for this. And I'm going to put my name, so Phil, LOC, wolfcreekflood.psd, because this is what I'm going to be turning in for the assignment. And I'm going to click Save. I'm going to make sure I know where it's saving. It's going to be saved in the downloads. I might just put this on the desktop so I can find it later. And I'm going to click Save. Maximize compatibility. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And that is the first part. The next part, if I wanted to make sure that I have an image of this that isn't in Photoshop format that I could, for instance, use in a portfolio, or in this case, upload for the project as well, I can also go up to File. I'm going to go down to Export, and I'm going to go to Quick Export as PNG. Portable Network Graphics, the PNG file, this is a high quality file that I can use. It is also web safe, and it's going to save it as Phil LOC, Wolf Wright, Wolf Creek Flood. Saves on the desktop, same place as my Photoshop. I'm going to click Save. I'm just going to make sure those are there. I'm going to go over here to the desktop. And we can see that these are here. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And so that is the first part. The second part of this project, I want to show you that I'm going to go over here to this little X. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And I'm going to open up a new tab. So I'm going to go back to Open. And we're going to go to Downloads. And we're going to get LOC Shepherd. The neat thing about these tools that you've learned today, Command 0, is that you can also use them to go through a color photo like this. And this is where they actually get more dramatic and even more useful. So first thing I want to do, I'm going to go in here, straighten this image using the crop tool. 1, 2, 3, 4 down, 5 down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. You can see that with this image, the edge of the film is very visible. So I'm going to drag that in past the edge of the film. Drag this past the edge of the film. I'm actually going to just drag this down to where I can still see those little marks. I'll clean those up here in a second. I'm going to drag this past the edge of the film. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and hit return. I'm going to commit the changes there and start our cleanup. So spot healing brush, remove those, remove this hair, remove that from the clouds, maybe clean the clouds up a little bit so that you can't see that it's repeating that pattern a little bit. And this is where this gets cool, is if I wanted to, for instance, and this is part of the project, go ahead and remove the dog, I can actually get pretty darn close to taking this dog out of this image too. I might have to go back over here and click and hold and grab the patch tool. Choose maybe some of this grass over here. If you're doing something like this, you want to make sure that you don't have things that repeat right next to each other, because the human eye automatically looks for patterns. If you see a pattern, so for instance, if I see the same spot next to each other, I'm going to know that's a pattern. So Command Z. I'm going to drag over here. And now I want to get this, whoops. If I accidentally select something and I want to deselect, I just click away. It's the same as the lasso tool. I'm going to select this section here. I'm going to maybe add some more, add some sagebrush from over here. That looks like it almost lines up. Click away. Look at that. Almost perfect. Good enough. So this spot here, whoops, clicked away. Oh, too much. Click over here and patch this with some of, this grass. How about? And that didn't work, so Command Z to undo. I might grab the clone stamp tool at this point and grab some of this area over here. Whoops, select, deselect, so I can freely work. And you'll see I'll press Option a lot. So I'll press and hold Option, and I'll click over here, and then maybe I'll only do a little bit. And this is also so that I don't have that pattern that maybe somebody would be able to come in and say, hey, you photoshopped that dog out of there. At this point, I might be able to click and hold and go back to the spot healing brush, and I might be able to get away with some of this. I'm going to go up here and change this down to 22 pixels, so something smaller. Up here, I might be able to just, whoops, nope, Command Z. I might be able to click and hold and get pretty darn close to where someone might, I mean, if you were looking real close, if you're looking for a copy, you'd probably be able to see this. But without looking, and if I say, Command minus, let's see. If I zoom out, that's pretty darn close to that dog being not there. So go ahead and try to do that as well for the project. All right, Command 0. The next part, I'm going to go up to adjustments. Now, we'll see that we now have vibrant hue, saturation, color balance, things like that. I'm still going to go ahead and use curves here. But in this case, I'm going to we now have RGB, so red, green, blue, as the color mode instead of grayscale. And I'm going to go ahead and set the white point again. I'm going to say that maybe this guy's hat band. This is the widest white in here. And look at that. Just goes from that almost that vintagey, just with that, it goes from this vintage yellowed out photograph very quickly to just a vibrant blue day. I'm going to set the black point as well and say the horse's eyes. And right there we have a very, very high contrast image. I might click around a little bit and see what I can find. Ooh, that's very blue. And it looks like that might be just about right. So I'm going to hide it so I can see. And right here we now have our second image in this project. So for this one, now we have the color corrected, everything touched up, and actually took out part of the image. And the last thing, of course, that I want to do is go ahead, go up to File, Save As, Fill, LOC Shepherd, go to Desktop, make sure this is in Photoshop. I'm going to click Save, maximize compatibility. And very lastly, export, quick export as PNG. Make sure it's on the desktop again. And just double check before I close things out. Go to desktop. And I have my PNG files, my PSD files, and I'm ready to upload.